Hey everybody, welcome to Slow City Church at home, online. My name is Brent.
I'm Jordan.
And we're really excited to be here with you today. If it is your first time with us online at Slow City Church, we would love to connect with you. This is a place where everybody's welcome, nobody's perfect. We believe that anything is possible and there's hope for everyone. So if you open up your phone, you download the Slow City Church app. There's a connect card on there, a start here tab that we would love for you to fill out. We'll connect with you. It'd be a great way just to connect and grow together.
Yeah, we got a few announcements for you. First thing, we're really excited. July 2nd, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. We're having an open house for our new multi-use, multi-purpose space at 1150 Laurel Lane. It's going to be an open house. We're going to have time to eat together, pray together, worship a little bit together. Yeah. Check out the new space, share some of that excitement with you all. We hope you can join us for that.
It's going to be awesome. We're really excited for Serve Night, Tuesday night, July 6th. It's an opportunity for our church family to come and partner with an incredible organization called First Fruits Farm that works to provide the best produce, the first choice fruits and vegetables to the food insecure in our community. You can sign up right now for that at slowcity.church/events or through the mobile app, Jordan.
Kids Camp.
Kids Camp.
August 9th, 10th, and 11th. We're so excited for Kids Camp. It's going to be a blast. I'm going to ask you to check out more details, slowcity.church/kids. You can find out all about that and register. Your kids will have a blast. Don't miss it.
We're really excited to continue to create spaces and environments where we can grow closer together to one another and to Jesus. And we're really excited as we kind of take the turn moving out of COVID to create an environment for our 55 and up community. We're having a 55 and up meetup for those of you in that season of life after kids. This is going to be a great time to be together, to eat good food, tell great stories, laugh together, grow closer together. Don't miss it. That is on Wednesday, July 14th at 1261 Laurel Lane. You can RSVP through the app or through the website.
Slow City Church really is just a product of so many people who faithfully give and are generous to the mission of Slow City Church. We have so much going on, even this summer. And so if this is a place you call home, we want to invite you into an opportunity to give to the work we're doing here at Slow City Church. You can give online on our mobile app or at our website, slowcity.church/give.
Yeah, we're really excited to wrap up our My Life's Message series today and are really glad, thankful, excited that you're here with us. We hope you enjoy the message. Hey everybody, welcome to Slow City Church at home, online, wherever you are. My name is Brent, and it is really good to be with you today. We are wrapping up our My Life's Message series. Over the past several weeks, we've had the opportunity to hear from different teachers, preachers, communicators, real people from real places, real times, and they've just come and exposed their life, exposed their story, and talked about where they've seen God just really teach them and lead them, what they've learned. I don't know about you, but I've been really blessed and encouraged by the past several weeks. And just this invitation to even look at my own life and ask, what is the message that God is speaking to me? See, God is a God of story. God is a God that creates us with memories and we get experiences and we can adventure and live out life and have all of these interactions with different people, have relationships to where we live a story. Have you taken time to look at your story? We see in the early church as people were coming to find and follow Jesus and discover hope for the first time, that telling stories was paramount. It was pivotal. It was this thing ingrained in everybody that led them. They were telling stories of their own lives and how they were running into Jesus. And there was this sense of urgency, almost like a passion that I just have to tell what God's done in my life. I have to tell where I've been and what I've been into and how God has intersected into my life and my story and how he's leading me. Do you remember the story of Jesus walking up to Samaria and meeting the woman who is sitting at the well? And he has this interaction with her where he starts asking her questions. And she starts talking about her life, and then she runs face to face with the Messiah. It says that like she's overwhelmed with this reality. And in John chapter 4, 28 and 29, 28, 29 and verse 39, it says this. It says she actually leaves her water jar. The woman went back to the town and said to all the people, "Come, see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Savior of the world? Could this be the Messiah?" And then verse 39, because of her story, many of the Samaritans from that town believed in Jesus because of the woman's testimony. Because of this real person from a real place and time with real struggle and real pain, when she runs into Jesus and then she goes back home and tells them her testimony, her story, her examples, her struggle, many people believe and have hope for the first time. Do you remember when Jesus and all of his disciples sailed across the Sea of Galilee and land at the place where a man lived who was full of affliction, who was constantly faced with his past, who was afflicted by demons? Jesus meets him and locks eyes with him and interacts with him and prays for him when he's healed and when he comes to his right mind. Jesus tells him in Mark 5, "Now I want you to go home to your own people and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." Verse 20 says, "So the man went away and began to tell all throughout the Decapolis," like this 10-city region, how much Jesus had done for him. And all the people were amazed. There was this pattern, there was this response in people when they came face to face with Jesus, that they just had to tell their stories, that they just had to tell what God was doing in their life. They had to tell where they had been, how they were raised, what they had thought, what habits what things they had gotten stuck in. And they had to just expose, here's what's gone on in my life. Here's what God has done. Here's what I've learned all throughout my life. See, storytelling, telling our stories, exposing our hearts is and was key to the movement of God. The good news of Jesus, after Jesus was resurrected and ascended into heaven, starts to spread throughout the known world through people who were just willing to share what they were learning, willing to share what they were struggling with, willing to share their doubts and their skepticisms and their criticism. They were willing to just expose their struggles. And the first church thrives and flourishes, grows, explodes around the known world as people were just being real and raw and honest and authentic and talking about their lives with friends, with family, talking about their faith with their coworkers and complete strangers, just saying, here's my life, here's my story, here's what I thought, here's what I was into, and here's what I witnessed. This is my story. Here's where Jesus intersected with my story. So it's a priority for our church, Slow City Church, to be a place and a group of people that just tells and shares stories with each other. Because we learn things from each other, don't we? You learn things from somebody else's experience that you relate to. You relate or you resonate with people's pain or people's struggle or people's doubts as they share it. There's this whole like, yeah, me too. I'm in this. We're all in the same boat as we expose our vulnerabilities and our victories and our joys and our pains and our sadness. Sharing stories is a priority for us. I love Proverbs 27:27. It says, "As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another." We sharpen each other as we share together. Maybe a shared table or a shared meal where we bring our stories to the table. We grow from one another as we share. Peter, an apostle of Jesus, would write to this group of followers of Jesus in the first century, and he would say in 1 Peter 3:15, "In your hearts, make sure that you trust and revere and honor Jesus as Lord." And then he says, "Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you, to give the reason for the hope that is within you." Always be prepared to give a reason for the hope that you have. Be ready to speak up and tell anyone and everyone everywhere who asks you why you're living the way that you are. So let me ask you again, what about you? What's your story? What was your childhood like? What was your adolescent years like? What is life like now for you as a college student? What was it like as a college student? What struggles or hurdles or obstacles or highlights or mountains or valleys have you experienced? What is your story? Where has God stepped into your story? Where has Jesus rescued you from that story and given you a new story, a new start, a new heart? What's your story? You know, I find it interesting. A lot of times I run into people and say like, hey, I want you to share this on stage or something. And they go, I don't really have much of a story. Have you felt that before? Like you don't know your story, or you haven't thought back on your story, or you just are convinced like my story isn't valuable, isn't important, it's pretty boring, it's pretty lame, or maybe it's really like too crazy that I don't know if I can trust a lot of people just sharing what I've been through. Have you thought about it? I want to give you just a quick challenge to either finding your story, discovering the message that God's maybe spoken over your life, and then I want to give you some courage to share it with somebody else in 4 simple steps. Here's a step to discovering your story, your life's message. Number 1 is write it. Write it down. A couple of years ago, I was on a plane. Actually, a year ago, pre-pandemic, I was on a plane and just pulled out my computer and just picked a date on the calendar and just started writing everything I could remember from that date forward, about 4 years ago. And I just start writing what I was thinking and what I was struggling with and conversations that I have. And as I'm writing, I'm just filling up my computer with all of these random memories and thoughts. And I had this gift at the end of the flight to look back and to go, man, I experienced all that. What did I learn in this? What did I see in this? There is power in reflecting and writing down where you've been. Maybe for you pull out a journal and you write down like, here's what life was like as a kid. Here's what the home I was raised in was like. Here are the memories I had from when I was in 5th grade. And here's the girl I dated. And here's what I was thinking. And here's the biggest obstacle I've ever faced. And here's why I was struggling with it. Write down some of your life's experience. Just write them down. And number 2, notice. Notice. Don't just write it down and rush past it and go, man, that was a good exercise. But notice where you've seen God moving in your life. Notice, make notes on maybe what lessons that you've learned in your life, what was hard for you and why, and when you were the most healthy in life. Why were you the most healthy in that season? Notice like what might God be up to through your experiences, through your circumstances. What lessons have you learned? What messages have you like kind of back up and look over that piece of paper that you've written down and go, man, what have I learned about God? What have I learned about myself? What have I learned about other people? And then number 3, really simple, share. Share it. Hit that retweet button on your own story. Like hit the like button and the share button on Facebook in your own life. Take the time to actually write it down, notice what you've learned, and then share it. Take that bold step of saying, hey, I want to invite you to coffee, and I just want to talk about my life and what I've been reflecting. Or maybe in a conversation that it can go deeper than sports and the weather. We know it's 75 and sunny, and we know the Lakers lost, and we know all these things. But what if you just expose what you've been learning? Hey, here's what I've been learning. And I just want to kick this off of you and talk about it with you. As iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. And then, number 4, last step, ask. Ask somebody else about their story. Write down everything you can remember. Make notes and notice what you've learned and what messages God has spoken over you. Share what you've learned with maybe a friend, a family member, a coworker, and then ask somebody else, what's your story? Where have you come from? What have you found yourself stuck in? And as iron sharpens iron, so one person sharpens another. Hebrews says this, encourage one another daily as long as it is called today. See, as we look back over our lives and as we ask ourselves, God, what have you done? When have I actually let you intersect with my story? Have I actually given my story, my heart to you? Have I seen you move in my life? Where can how have I trusted you? How have I walked away? How have you been faithful? How have I seen you work? Then when you expose that to somebody else, we find encouragement, courage inside of us as we share. Man, where's your story? Who will you share it with? How has God moved in your life? And how can I motivate you to take that step, to share with somebody else and to ask somebody else, what's your story? We sharpen one another. We're better together. This is a we church, not a me church. I'm really excited because to wrap up today's message, I get to just ask some of these questions. And I get to sit with two people, David and Blaire, and just ask them about their life, like they were writing it out on a piece of paper. Hey, tell me about your childhood. Tell me about your family. Tell me about some of the struggles. Tell me about some of the obstacles. Tell me about some of the lessons. Make notes, like together in this conversation. Let's make notes and talk about it. And you get to see and hear them share their stories with us, with you. And so hear me when I say this. Your story matters. You have a story. God wants to jump into the midst of your story and lead your story. He wants to teach you things. He wants to lead your life. And he wants to use you like he used the first followers of Jesus to spread hope for everyone everywhere as we just share our story, share our hope, share Jesus and what he's done in our life with everyone. I hope you enjoy this conversation. Hey, everybody. So grateful that you are here with us today. And you just get a glimpse of this conversation as we are kind of wrapping up our My Life's Message series. I am joined by two amazing people. One is Blaire Gallagher, happens to be my little sister. And the other is David Bowen. And just glad that you're with us as we kind of wrestle with our life's message story, that kind of thing. Why don't you guys take a minute and just kind of like each share a little bit about your life, yourself, your upbringing, where you're from, where were you born, what do you remember from your childhood? Maybe those two questions. Where were you born? What do you remember from kind of being a kid?
All right, you go first.
I'll start. Okay. I grew up in a town called Crestwood.
I remember I was there.
/ Pee Wee Valley.
Yeah.
A little bit outside of Louisville, Kentucky. I had an older brother and a younger brother. My parents got divorced when I was in 6th grade and started dating other people in 7th grade and got married.
Our parents, not you.
No. Did I say me?
I don't know. I wasn't.
And remarried our step-parents in 8th grade. We were a pretty active family. We did a lot of sports.
What sports did you play?
As a small child, t-ball, soccer, basketball, gymnastics, ballet, tap.
Yeah, but you were like really legit into
gymnastics.
Yeah.
And then
cheerleading.
I quit gymnastics and started cheerleading because I was not going to the Olympics.
You were like all state cheerleading, right?
Oh, yeah, we had a good cheerleading squad.
You individually too.
As a cheerleader?
I think you were.
Okay. Sure.
Okay.
After high school, I went to nursing school at Northern Kentucky University. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. My mom suggested nursing school, and I ended up loving it. I worked full-time for a short period of time before I went part-time. I skipped a little bit. My senior year of college, I met Jordan.
Yeah.
We fell hard and fast. We were friends for a year.
In love.
Yeah. We were friends in love for a few months and then started dating and got married the following year.
Wow.
Yeah.
How old were you when you got married?
I was 23 when I got married. 23. And Jordan was
How old were
21.
you when you got married?
22.
22. I was 21.
Really?
Beat you by a year.
Dang
That's
you.
awesome.
Gosh.
All right, David, what about you? Where are you from? Kind of
All right.
snapshot.
Really excited. I'm from San Luis Obispo.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah.
Born and raised.
Born and raised. I'm reading the book right now, Paul Farmer, Mountains Beyond Mountains. If you haven't read it, it's a very interesting book.
Cool.
And I'm reading that thing just thinking, oh my gosh, yeah, this guy really lived. And here I am in San Luis. Went away for 20 years after graduating from Cal Poly and made our way back because we wanted to come back into
Where'd you
slow
move
life.
to?
Moved to the Bay Area. So we were actually out in the East Bay. Walnut Creek is what people know. We lived in Pleasant Hill.
Yeah.
It was my first job. Really hadn't been in the city before. So
Yeah.
that was all a new experience. But growing up in San Luis, pretty hard. I mean, to beat that experience, we had
Good time.
lived on like an acre right down to the Anholm district, which I had no idea was called the Anholm district until I moved back and wanted to buy a place where I grew up. Oh, you want to be in the Anholm district? What the heck? I truly didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
But it was a great area. We had a creek in the backyard, built more boats, had caused more challenges, problems in the neighborhood by building dams and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it was a great place to grow up.
What'd your parents do growing up?
My dad, I truly thought he was amazing because, he was in charge of this Cadillac Oldsmobile dealership in San Luis, right up there on Monterey Street that used to be Daylight Gardens now. It's out of business. That was
it's empty. It's for sale.
So you could buy it. Yeah.
I can't.
It could be Slow City. He was the office manager up there for years, and just everything that he did, I probably chose to do the opposite. As far as he was extremely conservative, went to work at 8:00 in the morning, rode his bike, walked, came home for lunch. I don't think he ever got off work after 5:30. He was just always there, kind of thing. So we had kind of that lifestyle. My mom was home, my dad was home after 5:30, and we had a pretty cool life growing up.
So you decided to go to Cal Poly afterwards to study?
Had no idea what to do. Looked through what was booming in the 80s, and it was technology.
It was jazzercise is what it was.
I got into technology. I was a very accidental technologist. So there's some of these people like Josh, who we know, who breathes technology. That wasn't me. I was... I really liked the idea of solving problems with technology. So I ended up kind of not cutting it in the computer science area and made it into this new thing they started called MIS, Management Information Systems, which really, I think, was made for people like me that like technology, but really would rather solve business problems with it. So that's what I did.
So where, like in both of your stories, because we kind of just zoomed through kind of childhood, St. Louis, Crestwood, parents, divorce, sports, finding technology, Cal Poly, all those things. As you kind of look back over your life, what were some of maybe the principles or things that you noticed in life or in your relationship with your parents or in the world that kind of marked you or that were impressed on you?
And we have how many hours?
I know we've got a few minutes. We got a few minutes.
All right.
A few minutes. Maybe give me one thing that, as you look back, it's that 0 to 18, 20 pre-marriage years that you're this idea kind of struck me or drove me. What do you think?
Things that have marked me. I have two things that come to mind. When our parents got divorced, it was the first time I felt like life was not very stable. I had some anxiety, and that's the first time I remember having any depressive thoughts.
Yeah.
And then fast forward to my senior year of college. I was living close to family. Both you and Brad, my younger brother, moved away. My best friend moved away, and I was feeling very lonely and had tried to befriend a very bad influence who ended up stealing from me and
took your car?
Took my car.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was a defining moment for me in my faith because I felt so broken. I had distanced myself from church and from community, and it was when I feel like I realized I am not made to do life by myself.
Yeah.
I have a purpose, and I need to look to God to find that purpose.
That's huge.
Wow. Yeah. So a lot of mine was the church relationship that I had growing up.
Yeah.
Probably take too long to explain all of it, but it was a very conservative group, and that marked me as.
Conservative is a very it hits people different ways.
Not politically.
Are you saying rigid? Maybe a rigid group?
Probably a better term. People would say legalistic.
Okay, there you go.
And I hate to say that because there's people who I know that I still have strong relationships with that are part of that growing up years. I'm not fellowshipping with them as a day in, day out experience anymore. And so that's changed our relationships. But it was a lot of pressure to conform to an expectation that people had for you of what they believed represented a Christian.
Yeah.
And so you felt this, I absolutely knew Ephesians 2:8-9. By grace you saved. I mean, that's just something that I really believe has been a governing principle that it's not anything I can do. And yet you still wrestle with that fact that I'm supposed to do something. Yeah. And that doing something was being part of, conforming to this expectation of what had been defined for you to be in this group. And in this group meant that you were a Christian. And so those like the Venn diagrams of
Yeah.
being a Christian really had to be a subset almost of being in that group, which was kind of weird, but it definitely influenced in my relationships with other believers who I didn't connect with because they weren't part of that group. So therefore they weren't in that subset or superset. They were in a different one.
Yeah. So you've kind of had a faith background of sorts growing up, but a faith that was kind of birthed in kind of legalism or what you did. And I'm not like trying to cast, but maybe a guilt-based kind of faith of like, I got to do this or else kind of mentality.
I think Jordan one time, was he the one talking about liking hymns or knowing hymns?
Yeah.
So Jordan, I need to get together and riff some hymns one of these days. But I don't know if this is a hymn, but I can remember one song growing up that kind of defined, don't go look it up, but it was by and by, when I look on his face, I'll wish I had given him more. And I could still quote you probably 2 or 3 verses from that I learned at a young age that I think unfortunately just had a heavy impact, that you then live in a life of regret thinking, I'm not doing enough. I'm not performing well enough.
And you kind of miss out on the relationship with Jesus.
Yeah, you're too, exactly. And so I think the people who taught me that didn't mean it in a negative way, but it was more just, well, if you do these things, then you won't have those regrets. So it's like, you can't do those things. And so it just became kind of, for me personally, it was a vicious circle. Yeah.
And you were talking about that season of your life where somebody took something from you and some of that pain and loneliness. And that's when you recognized maybe your need for other people, your need for real relation. Is that when you think faith became real and not this like just kind of thing that you went to, or the thing? I don't know.
Yes, I loved church growing up. I never knew anything was missing. Honestly, I loved my small group leaders. We had amazing youth ministers, and I never knew that my faith wasn't real until that moment. Honestly, I feel like no one was holding me accountable. I wasn't letting people in.
Yeah.
But that was a defining moment in my faith. That is the point where I feel like I turned to Jesus and not that I've never strayed, but that I have pursued him since then.
Yeah. Now, you guys now have, you're married, you have kids. We talk about maybe your family now and like what you've learned through having, I mean, you and Jordan got married when you were how old?
I was 23.
23. When did you have Ellison? How old were you?
26.
So you have Ellison and Jonas.
I had Jonas when I was 28.
And David, you were married to Lauren at
22. Yeah.
Okay. And then when did you start having kids? And
29. I'm pretty sure we were 29.
Yeah.
So I was still sorting through getting what did it mean to go to work, live in the Bay Area, doing all that type of thing.
Yeah.
But I believe, Kelsey was born, I think we were 28 or 29, and David a couple of years later.
Yeah. What were some of like maybe if you could highlight them, some of the unexpected things that you walked through as a parent, good or bad?
Wow. I think what you always say is don't live vicariously through your kids. Everybody tells you that. You think don't do it. But I think I still, especially with my son, I think I put things in front of him that I was thinking, gosh, if I had known this, I would have done this better. And then you recognize at some point, they're not you. Yeah. And don't put some of the same, or that was probably the biggest thing for me, is that I felt some of the things that I were challenged by in middle school that just drove me crazy, that I think I probably still have scars from today. Yeah. Maybe not probably, I do. That I felt David, my son, would deal with the same things. And I focused too much on trying to steer him away from things that I was challenged by, when he didn't deal with that. Yeah. It just wasn't him. And so to realize that your kids aren't you, do they have some of your same attributes? Are they going to have some of your, challenges in life that you dealt with, but they aren't you, and they may not be dealing with what you are. And so don't put your burdens onto them.
Did you ever fight? Because I know I fight with this sometimes, like just being present, like you have these expectations for your kids, or you want something for your kids. And so you're like, and yet, like, I know you're a successful person and like you're a driven person, like, was it hard for you when they were little, when they were in middle school, high school, for you to just fight to be present in those moments?
Oh no, I nailed it.
Yeah, you nailed it. Good job. All right.
No, okay. So through the first Gosh, open confessional. Is this maybe we
Yeah,
should
hey, this is public. This is public.
Yeah.
This is evergreen content.
We just went through the Goliath must fall, fear, biggest thing. Yeah. And so I was also afraid of failing at work, or just, I was really motivated by being there, leading my teams, being omnipresent at work kind of thing, but not omnipresent at home. And my first, 10, 12, 15 years in the workplace. Yeah. I worked for a consulting company right out the bat, and that's just to eat you up. I mean, it was very intense. And then I went to work for a technology semi-startup in the application business space and spent most of my time there. But a lot of pressure to perform. Yeah. And I would go in, dealing with the Bay Area commute. So you'd get going pretty early in the morning and then just not come home. And that was, talk to Lauren. I mean, for those of you who met Lauren, talk to Lauren, but she was a trooper.
So you learned some of those things even as a parent, of just like fighting for presence, fighting to like.
My big thing was just being at home.
Being
at home. So real quick story. So at 2000, I think it was, I had, turning such a while, I had a detached retina. Yeah. And for those of you that don't know too much about detached retina, the healing process is that you lay flat down or you keep your head down for X number of weeks until the retina goes back into place in the back of your eye.
It's kind of a spiritual thing.
No, it was. Yeah. And so truly I say that the loss of eyesight was more an eye opener for me. Yeah, and up until that point, the beauty of it was our daughter Kelsey was 11 or 12, maybe 11 at that time. And she heard Lauren saying something, so I'm like, no, David's just never really been here for us. It's like, he just doesn't.
And then that kind of, do you think that kind of?
No, what happened is that I had now been like, after the whole thing happened to my eye, I saw what was going on, and it truly was a God moment for me. I never went back to work in that same way again. Went back to work, but I think I've shared this before, but my career became a job after that. I just kind of just refocused. But Kelsey heard Lauren saying this, and she said, "Mom, that's not true. Dad's always been here." And I'm like, yes, kind of thing. It's like, I know that's not true, but it is interesting is for those of you who have kids, still like you're thinking, oh, I blew it. You know what? God's pretty forgiving, and your kids are forgiving. His grace, I think, will cover that. So I really appreciate the fact that my later years with my kids, I truly did invest heavily with them, and I think it paid off. Yeah.
What about you?
I love all of that. I feel like that is good advice for me because I have young kids. I just thought that parenting was going to be so easy. I loved babies. I wanted like 8. I played with babies until I was 12. And I couldn't wait to have kids. And then I did, and it was so hard. I didn't realize how much I was going to have to depend on other people and depend on the Lord. But I feel like I've learned more about God's love for me now that I've become a parent. Because there's nothing my kids would do that would make me not love them.
It's awesome. Okay. I know this is like rapid fire with you guys, and we are going to have long format conversations on the podcast. If you have not listened to the Slow City podcast and done the My Life's Message sermon series, we've done some deep dives. We're going to deep dive in here.
Can't wait.
Yeah. But like, as you look at, birth to however old you are now, okay, what do you feel like, and maybe try and fight to keep this short. One thing that God has just said, here's what I want you to hear from me.
I'm going to go. Is that okay?
You go.
Go ahead.
I have always struggled with feeling like I'm not enough. Like I'm not fun enough, thin enough, trendy enough, whatever enough. And I feel like I've struggled with it since middle school. But I feel like I'm learning more and more that because of Jesus, I am enough, that I am created in God's image, that I am God's masterpiece, that God can use someone like me. I don't have to live some other life. I don't have to be another person. God can use simple me. Yeah. That is what I feel like I'm learning. I have learned.
And you feel like God just continued to say, like, this is...
You're enough.
It's awesome. And that's powerful.
In me, yeah.
No, that's really good. And I would say those are things that I'm still working on. Just realizing, back to what I said before, that it's not a works thing, that I don't have to continue to prove myself or just meet the expectations of others. I'm still challenged by that. I think the big thing I'm learning, and I can't say I've achieved it yet, but is compassion. So I think I pray daily for just a heart of compassion, that I look through other people's lenses, because it's so easy for me to be too critical of how you're raising your kids, how you're doing your job, what you're saying, or how you're acting out, and not realize that, man, where you came from is so different. I was so blessed in some of the things that I got as a child, and the input that was poured into me, that I started out several steps ahead of where many others have. And just to have a heart of compassion, realize that, God's working through them in their time, and not put pressures on people that aren't theirs.
It makes me think of that old Hillsong song that there's that chorus that says, break my heart for what breaks yours. Like, let me see the things that you want me to see. Let me to care about the things that you want me to care about. Prioritize the things you want me to prioritize, Lord. Like that, it makes me think of that. Man, there's so many more questions I want to ask, and we're going to. But I'm just grateful that, I just think it's powerful that every single individual has a story to tell. It may be, you may think this is what we talked about. Everybody's like, I don't really have anything to teach any. And yet we've just sat here, had this conversation, and I guarantee you there's somebody is listening to this today going, man, what Blaire said, yes, I needed that. What David just said, yes, I needed that as a dad, or as a friend, as a follower of Jesus. When we expose what's happening in us, when we share where we've been, where we're at, where we're headed, what God's that's what the church is. This collection of people that an actual we church that just shares what we're learning. And I'm grateful that you guys were willing to show up to the offices on a whim and share a little bit. So again, tune into the My Life's Message podcast. You're going to hear more from David. I'm roping Blaire into that conversation too. And it's going to be awesome. Thanks guys. Appreciate it. Appreciate your time.